Welcome to A Heart for Home Education. My name is America, home educator to 3 children ages 9, 7, and 5. Today we are going to be talking about my Commonplace book. In my last Mother Culture video, I shared a little bit about my Commonplace Notebook, but I wanted to do kind of a more extended video on the idea since I had some questions about it. So I started keeping a Commonplace Notebook between 3 and 5 years ago. It's hard to say, but I really got more diligent with it about 3 years ago and kind of continued to get more diligent with it as the years have gone by. And now I really couldn't imagine reading a book without a Commonplace Notebook close by, or at least without the intention of using a Commonplace Notebook at least once a week. So I first heard about Commonplace Notebooking through Charlotte Mason, and she talked about having a book of mottos. That's kind of what she called it. And now it's kind of more called a Commonplace Notebook. But Charlotte Mason talked about having a book of mottos, how a mother should have one, and how she should teach her children to have a book of mottos, and encouraging the children to use a book of mottos with their school books. So really, she just said, have the children copy meaningful quotes from the books that they've read into their book of mottos, into their Commonplace book. And that's really all there is to it. There's not much more to my Commonplace Notebook. I record meaningful ideas from what I've read or listened to into my Commonplace Notebook. So I'm sure there are other sources to learn about Commonplace Notebooking and other various approaches to Commonplace Notebooking. But as I understand it from Charlotte Mason, it is a book to record inspiring ideas, inspiring quotes from the readings that you have been engaged in. So essentially, it is a way to engage with what you're reading and pull out those inspiring ideas and inspiring quotes and record them so that you can remember them and you can refer back to them. It is such a joy to be able to go back to my old Commonplace Notebook that I kept for about 3 years and steadily added to it over time. There would be times when I would forget about it for 2, 3 months and then return back to it. And it's kind of like visiting an old friend, remembering the books that I was reading at the time, kind of seeing how my tastes have matured slightly and developed over time, but going back and being able to remember fondly what those books taught me, what those books inspired in me, has been a real joy and a real treat. And so I'm at the point where I just don't think that I could read a book without having the intention of recording parts of it into my Commonplace Notebook. So I'm sure there are various approaches to keeping a Commonplace Notebook, but for me, as a busy mom who wants to still engage in mother culture and engage with good books, I try to keep this really simple for myself. So like I said, I had one book that lasted me about 3 years, and then I wanted to start fresh. I wasn't completely done with that notebook, but I wanted to start fresh this year. And so I purchased this notebook at Target for $10, and it is faux leather. It's very pretty. It has a bookmark. It has nice thick pages. Now, your notebook does not have to be super aesthetically pleasing, but I think it does help because you are recording beautiful ideas from what you've read, and they ought to be in a beautiful notebook, right? I know that notebooks can get really pricey, but this was very affordable for $10. Hopefully this will last me this whole next year and maybe into the following year. I'm not sure. But there's a couple of things that you do want to look out for and that you do want to avoid when purchasing a Commonplace notebook. Now, if finances are an issue for you, then just use whatever spiral bound or composition notebook you have on hand. Don't let finances hinder you from this life-giving practice. But if you do have a budget for it, what I would look out for is having thick, sturdy pages. And the point of that is so that pen won't bleed through the pages. So I like to use Sharpie pens, and it's a nice, thick, dark ink, but I don't want it to bleed through terribly to the next pages. So that is a criteria for me, is to have nice thick pages. This bookmark is a really lovely feature that is not a must-have, but it is really nice to be able to just open up right to where I'm recording. And then it also needs to have a sturdy binding. So those are kind of the main things that you need to look for in a book. So a regular spiral bound notebook, that those pages might tear out over time as you keep flipping through them. The spiral bound commonplace notebook that I had before this one had nice, thick, sturdy pages, even thicker and sturdier than this. And I got that one at TJ Maxx for, I believe, even less than this one. So if you are doing a spiral bound one, just make sure that paper is really thick if you have the budget for it. So I will link down below this notebook that I got from Target. Like I said, it was only $10, super affordable, and also very pretty. So then the logistics of setting up a commonplace notebook. I left a couple of blank pages in the beginning to record the books that I am going to complete this year. So just keeping a running list of the books that I've completed. Just a simple list of the title and the author and around the date that I finished it, just so I can have a log and I can remember as years go by what books I was reading in 2025. I am kicking myself because I only left one-ish page and I should have left like two or three pages just in case. But all that to say, I think that's a nice way to start your commonplace notebook, is to leave yourself some space to record what you will finish that year for reading. I'm not writing down my goals for reading. I'm just writing down what I actually read, kind of like a Charlotte Mason logbook. I'm not going to make a list of things that I hope to get to. I have that list elsewhere, but I'm just recording what I actually did read. A couple of people in the comments asked me how I organize my commonplace notebook. And the answer to that is that I don't really organize it at all. I have tried to think through some ways to organize it, but all of them just felt inorganic and unnatural, and like they would kind of box me in to where my commonplace notebook might become a little more stressful, or I might leave things out when I wish that I could fit them in. I just want to be able to write freely in my commonplace notebook without thinking like, okay, I've only allotted 10 pages of my commonplace notebook for this reading and I'm running out of space, so I am going to forego putting this meaningful quote in. I do not want that. So what I landed on is to just copy things down as I read them naturally. So I normally rotate through multiple books in a day or throughout the week. I'm not just reading one book per week. So you can hear more about that in my first mother culture video, where I talked about how I kind of structure the reading throughout my days. So I just copy down things as I find them meaningful or as it suits me. As much as it makes sense to my brain to say like, okay, this is the book that I read, put the title down, and then list all of the commonplace quotes I have. That's just not how I read. And it would cause me to get really backed up in my commonplace logging. And I'll explain that more in a moment. But basically, as I read through a book, if I own it, I am not afraid to dog ear the corner of it and underline or highlight where the quote is that I enjoyed and that inspired me. I am not a collector of amazing vintage books. I think they're beautiful and lovely, but for this stage of our budget and family, I am much more concerned with like having the book rather than acquiring the beautiful edition. I think that is a wonderful and beautiful hobby to have. And I don't judge anyone. I really appreciate the hobby, but just right now I'm not there yet. I like to buy my books because I often like to spend more time with it than the library allows. And for this sole purpose of commonplacing my books, I like to own my own copy so that I can handle them as I please. So I like to just highlight or underline the quote that I enjoyed and then dog ear the page so that at the end of the week or at the end of the day, whenever I'm commonplace notebooking again, I can refer back easily to what I underlined, and then I'll just flip the dog ear back over and then that's done. For library books, I bought these little sticky tabs so that I can stick them into the library books, and I just stick them near where the quote is that I want to copy into my commonplace notebook. But if it's a book I own, I have these Bible highlighters right here that are in pretty pastels, but more importantly, they don't bleed through to the next page, and they're not some garish neon color that I don't appreciate. So I got this cute little pencil pouch at Target again when I was there with my friend. And I love that it has like an open pouch here for all of my pens, pencils. These are the Sharpie pens that I like to use. And then it also has this little folder area. And that's where I can stick my tabs and highlighters. I pretty much do not read a book, or it stresses me out to read a book if I don't have this handy and nearby. Like I need all of my tools so that I can read my book properly. Now, I don't always have my Commonplace Notebook with me when I read. There are some days when I intend to copy it into my Commonplace Notebook, but sometimes I have the intention of I will put this in my Commonplace Notebook on Sundays or just the next time that I have it, but I'm not always copying my daily readings into this. So the main way that I keep track of the quotes is I just kind of quote it and I copy it, just like copywork, just like my children do. And then at the end, I will write what the book is from. Usually on the first entry, I will write the author and then the page number. And then if I'm doing multiple entries from that same book in a row, I will just write the page number after that. And so if I just see a page number, then I know that I need to just scan up and I will see the book title with the author, and then that quote falls under there. And usually, because these quotes are so meaningful, if I read the quote, I'm going to usually remember what book it was from. But that's just to save room, to save my hand from cramping. I usually just write the title of the book once, and then I'll do a series of commonplace entries usually. And then when I switch to the next book, then I will switch out the book title and the author again. So that's just how I keep track of it. Now, I also copy things from my children's readings into my Commonplace Notebook. I've read through several of the Narnia books by myself, but I'm rereading them with the children now. And I will dog ear that book and copy it into my own Commonplace Notebook. This is ultimately a practice that I hope my children will develop as they get older, as Charlotte Mason recommends. But for now, they see me engaging with the books. They see me writing in my books, which I've had to kind of clarify with my children, like only mommy is allowed to write in books and highlight in books. But my daughter will sometimes ask if she can underline or highlight in some of her various books, her little readers and stuff. And I will let her sometimes, depending on the book, but explaining like this passage meant a lot to mom. This interaction with Aslan meant a lot to mom. And now I'm going to copy it down so that I can remember it and revisit it later. Them seeing me do that now hopefully will lead to them having the same desire to do it for themselves as they get older. Now, for when do I use my Commonplace book? I pretty much approach all of my readings thinking I will have something to commonplace about at some point, but I don't necessarily do it every single time that I read my book. It just depends on my schedule, how much time I have to read my book, and also how many commonplace quotes I am getting. So I just finished my Antonia by Willa Cather, and I loved the book, but I only had about 3 dog ears. So as I was going through, I realized I could just save all of these commonplace quotes to copy into my notebook at one time, because there just weren't that many. It was a wonderful book and I loved it. And here's a side note. I read O Pioneers by Willa Cather last year, and it was okay. I did not love it. I was not blown away by it. I wasn't really sure why it was on a lot of good book lists, or it was recommended by a lot of people that I was seeing. It was a fine book. So when I saw my Antonia on the other lists, I thought, well, I didn't really like that other Willa Cather book, so I probably am not going to read any more of her books. But then I was at a thrift store and I found my Antonia, and whenever I find a good book or a great book at the thrift store, I feel pretty much obligated to buy it. I will have to buy it. As long as it's within my budget, I'm going to have to buy it. It's on the lists. So I purchased it not thinking that I would read it right away, but I needed a new fiction bedtime read, and so I started it. And within the first chapter, I was hooked, and I loved the whole book. It was wonderful. So that's just a side note about how I go about adding and swapping out books on my to be read list for the year. If I find it at a thrift store and it's on the good books list, then I'm probably going to buy it and I'm probably going to read it. So, all that to say, if I'm kind of going through it and I'm pacing it out, saying, like, okay, I'm having a commonplace entry almost every other page, I need to stay on top of those entries and not let them build up toward the end of the book when now I've got 100 entries to put in my commonplace notebook. So I try to pace it out that way. So I had a ton of commonplace entries from the ruthless elimination of hurry. And so I had to keep pretty diligent and consistent with that piece because I knew that they would all add up at the end of the book, and then it would become cumbersome to have to copy all of those entries. But I would say most weeks I save a lot of commonplace entries for Sunday because I find it really peaceful and life-giving to look back on what I've read throughout the week and to enter it into my commonplace notebook to kind of chew on those ideas again. And so it's a peaceful practice for me. So I usually save it for Saturdays or Sundays on the Sabbath when I can just kind of rest and engage with those ideas again. So it's just kind of a natural way that I am engaging with what I'm reading and then copying it into my commonplace notebook. There's no set formula for me. It's really just a life-giving practice that I have enjoyed so much. And skimming through here, it's only March, but skimming through here and looking at all the friends that I've made already from these books is a blessing to me. I pretty much have the rule that if it was a good book, at least one commonplace quote needs to go in my notebook from the book, because I have to have some type of record of what living idea I got from that book. And so I try to at least copy one thing, but most of the time, if it's a good book, I'm copying multiple things. Now, a word on audiobooks. I really love audiobooks. I normally have one nonfiction going, one fiction going, and then a Charlotte Mason on audio. So usually 3 streams of audiobooks to choose from, and I kind of listen to them at different points in the day. Now, for audiobooks, there are definitely times that I need to commonplace things that I've heard in the audiobook. So I will generally check out those books from the library so that I have a paper copy that I can reference. On Hoopla, which is our free digital library checkout system for audiobooks, I can bookmark places, and then at the end of the book, I usually just revisit those. For audiobooks, I find that I commonplace them a little bit less just because I don't have the physical thing, but I do try to keep the practice of commonplacing those reads. So I will bookmark it in the Hoopla app, or it would be a good idea to screenshot the chapter that you're reading from, but it's handy to just have the physical copy so that you can reference it and commonplace it. So that's how I handle audiobooks and commonplacing. And then, since we're talking about books, I might as well share what I'm reading right now. Right now, I am reading The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. That is a library copy, and I have tons of little bookmark daggers on that book because of how many amazing things that I'm reading in there, and that is one that I'm trying to keep up on commonplacing. I am listening to Anne of the Island on audio on Spotify, and that one I've got a library version coming reserved for me at the library, so I can commonplace that one easier. And then I'm also, for my nonfiction streaming listen, I am listening to Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman, and that one is not at my library, but I can kind of pause it and kind of go back to the parts that I have enjoyed. You can also take a screenshot of where the little scrubbing thing is down at the bottom. You can take a screenshot to know what time you need to go back and commonplace into your notebook. And then I am listening to Formation of Character by Charlotte Mason. And that one is amazing because the version that I purchased from Living Book Press has an attached version of the actual book, so I can go back and copy it easily. And then I just finished my Antonia, and I'm about to start Anna Karenina for my evening fiction read. So that is my commonplace notebook. That is how I keep a commonplace notebook, why I keep one, and why I think you should keep one as well for your mother culture time. If you have any other questions about commonplace notebooking, please leave it in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.